Welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast. I'm Steve Gibson.
I'm Ben Matlock.
And this has been a week for most of us.
Yeah, it's week one of quarantine, you know.
Yeah, it's technically week 2 by the time this hits, but yeah. It's I don't know. There's not really anything to say about it. We're all going through it.
These
I don't
will
think
be
any of us like
these episodes will be really interesting timestamps of like two people just like gradually losing their minds. Because the thing is, like right now, like after 1 week of that shit, like Twitter is just, you know, everybody's doing kind of what I thought they would do after 1 week. Like, oh, poor me, quarantine. I have to stay in my house and fucking relax and play video games. Whatever will I do? And it's like, give that shit like 3 more weeks and watch what happens.
What I was having a hard time finding that, like how to word it in like Twitter bite-sized like snippets, but to me, everybody seems like they're acting in that like it's almost they're in the hype of the moment. Like, yeah, we're in quarantine too. We're quarantining better than you. Well, I'm quarantined like this, and we're hunkered down and we're ready. And it's like, well, that's all fine and good. You know, your energy's there for week 1, but they're saying this could be like 2.5, 3 months.
The things I've read about it, like they have started testing vaccines for coronavirus, and it's kind of that scary thing where they have to like jump immediately to like human trials. So
yeah, and at that, like, what are the short-term like repercussions?
Well, that's the thing.
Seems cool.
Well, that's the thing. They injected a person with one of them, as far as I know. They might have done more, but now we have to wait like 14 months to see what happens to that person, because you can't just fucking give it to the entire population.
Well, right?
Because it might kill them.
One of those things that you inject and be like, it all seems fine.
Yeah, and
then like 3 weeks later, it's like, where'd that other arm come from?
Yeah,
like, obviously not to that extent.
That actually wouldn't be too bad. You just told me like, yeah, we'll get rid of this thing, and now you have another useless appendage. That wouldn't be too bad.
I mean, it could be like 6 months down the road, their liver shuts down, and it's like, oh well, good thing we just injected this into 1 million plus people.
And but I am reading a lot of encouraging reports, because like you go online, it's just fucking doom and gloom, and I gotta find shit to like give me like raise my spirits a little, because as a species we're handling coronavirus about as poorly as we could, but but there are like, you know, people working hard, and there's a lot of, you know, charitable organizations really stepping up, and that stuff's nice. And we're also seeing a lot of like experimental treatments being successful, and again, not enough that they're put into wide scale, you know, shut this shit down use. But it is encouraging to see that we're starting to see some stuff actually fight this thing. But what I've read about it and what I've heard about this is, best case scenario, we're going to be on and off quarantining for like the next year. So you're going to, because we can't let the infection population blow up again. So you have to, like, by doing what we're doing now, if you're doing it now and not partying in Miami like a fucking dipshit, like you're slowing it down, the infection rate, so hospitals can kind of get a grip on their fucking sick population.
Right. And from what I understand from that, I don't want to be the like doom and gloom panic alarmist, but it sounds like they're very rapidly approaching that point where they're like, well, we're out of medical supplies, so
yeah.
That's the problem. It's like you can kind of deal with it and make it look not that bad until you hit that point. Once you hit that point, then it just exponentially gets fucked. Like,
right.
But which is what we're trying to stop. Which is why I want to punch every one of those like Miami Beach, like, I'm not afraid of getting sick. It's like, no,
I'm not afraid of getting sick. None of us could
care less if you fall over dead either.
After the week of work I've had, I'm ready to die, but I don't want to kill, 15 other people to do it.
Right, exactly. So, I'm getting tired of saying that on Twitter, and I think we said it last week on the show, but that's the whole point, people. Like, and I get it, because I was the same way. Our natural tendency is to be like, I'm not going to let this scare me, and it's like, well, it's not about that.
It's not about being scared. It's about, accepting the reality, and like the reality is we're all going to have to sacrifice a little. That's what's infuriating about those like spring breakers fucking interviews and shit that were out on the internet. It's just like, because the only thing they want to do is party, and it's like, you could do that in like at home, like, you don't have,
Well,
You just want to drink beer. There's still beer.
I think this whole spring break at the beaches in Florida thing has always been stupid. Although, like, I get the appeal of being a college guy around a bunch of drunk, half-naked, or full-naked college girls. But, like, so they've been planning it, and, a lot of times you've bought your hotel room and your tickets. So I get that it sucks that, like, to have it canceled. But this is why you can't trust people to take it upon themselves to do something about it. Right. And it's infuriating that the last I heard, which was this morning, the Florida governor's like, okay, we'll close the beaches next Monday, because God forbid we hurt the party population over the weekend. Yeah. And then my wife did mention something where she saw a headline where a lot of the local governments and local beaches are like, fuck you, we're shutting down anyway. Like,
yeah, and they should.
But yeah.
Well, like what I was originally going to say about all this, and I genuinely think we won't be able to help ourselves. There will be like quarantine updates on this show. It's what we're living with. So sorry, these episodes might be long again. But I was going to say, like, people are like joking about like the quarantine and shit. And it's like, it's real, easy to like be lighthearted about it now. As somebody who's pretty much just stayed in his room and gone to work his entire life, I promise you this shit doesn't stay fun. You will go fucking mad. And if you don't do something really impulsive like start a podcast, you're in deep shit.
Well, yeah.
Luckily, we have
could spend one. As I say, we could spend a whole episode on this, but we won't. So, and
I'm half drunk now, so let's get going.
Yes, and that's going to be perfect for this. As I mentioned on Twitter, I thought I'd try something. I've had this idea for a while, but I just hadn't had to pull the trigger on it. But I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit this week, which is why it's perfect that you're drinking. So this is a little different than what we normally do, but I think it'll be fun. And you may know some of these, you may not, but I decided to look up some common idioms, common sayings in English, and look at their origins. So that's what I wanted to look at. But what I did is I wrote down the real origin, and then I made up a fake origin for each one that I'm going to go through. And I want to see if you can pick out which one's the real origin.
Are these like
and which one's
geographical origins or like just story origins?
I always say the word wrong, like etymology, like where it came from in language.
Gotcha.
And we always mention, we always list our sources on our homepage with Libsyn. I wanted to point that out ahead of time for a couple reasons. If you can play along with this game, so if you think you've got the answer, Ben, when I'm still reading it, try to hold off till I read both. But you certainly feel free to like interject your thoughts, like that sounds whatever.
Okay.
But
so this combines.
Try not to like look them up as I'm saying it. It's kind of like a game show. But there's no prize.
So this combines my two favorite things, being put on the spot and ignorance. So,
and you may know some of these, so I don't know, because I didn't know these origins. I don't know how common they are. But anyway, so I was mentioning the sources I wanted to point out are there for you to look up for a couple reasons. One, if you enjoy these kind of factoids, I didn't use all of them from the two sites I pulled these from. Okay. Also, when I say this is the real origin, I mean this is the real origin according to this one article. So if you are a linguist and you know better, feel free to be like, well, actually, on Twitter, and I'd be interested. But and
use the hashtag well actually, and we'll find it.
But because of the nature of that, too, whenever we use sources, we try to do it right where we use the source, but like reword it into our own words. And I still did that a little bit, but a lot of these definitions are going to be very close to word for word because it's like writing an entry out of a dictionary. Yeah. So I want to make sure I give credit to the articles that these came from. So they are linked on the post.
Okay. So I'm going to do a little game within a game of my own, where you'll say something, like you'll ask me something, and for every time I don't actually pay attention to what you're saying, I'll take a drink.
Well, fuck. By the end, it'll just be me talking to myself, and then we'll hear a thud, and we'll be like, well, join us next week, maybe.
Okay.
All right. So what I've got the phrase, and then I put a little definition of the phrase. Most of them are very well known anyway, but just in case you're not like a native English speaker, or some of these things can be regional. So I didn't know,
or you are a native speaker like me, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Now you'll recognize the phrases. None of them are that out there. So I'll start.
Okay.
So the first phrase is feeling under the weather, which of course means to like feel sick or feel ill, which is, I didn't intentionally put that as the first phrase this week, but I guess it's fitting.
Well, according to the news, that came from China.
To feel under the influence of Chinese. And I got to keep reminding myself, I noted at the head of these paragraphs which one's real and which one's fake, and I got to try not to read the word, be like, real, blah, 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 blah. Oh, fuck. Okay.
All right, so now I know the first one's always real.
So, under the weather. So, it originally started as under the wither. The phrase was used to describe the feeling of wilting or withering away under the effects of an illness. But at some point in the late 19th century, the phrase began appearing as under the weather, likely as a result of more of the population moving away from agriculture jobs where the word wither evokes strong emotional imagery, to urban jobs where they would have to travel down crowded streets under bad weather. That was not a great feeling. Or, originally started as under the weather bow, the phrase was coined by sailors at sea. When the weather would get bad and the sea would become turbulent, they'd often ride out the storm down in their bunks in the hold in order to avoid becoming seasick. So the phrase literally meant riding out the queasy, ill feeling, hiding under the weather bow. So those are your two options.
I'm going with that one, the second one, because it has the sea involved, and I like oceans.
Yeah, and I do too, which is why I should have known that is the correct origin.
Hell yeah, dude. Everything came from the water.
Water. It's interesting because when I was reading the article, like I said, it did start as under the weather bow, which of course got shortened because that sounds stupid, especially if you're not a sailor. But a weather bow, I guess it's the side of the ship that's like open to the most like wind and weather, the side that's not protected.
Yeah.
But then it's like, and it meant like riding out the storm underneath in the hold. I'm like, well, then what the fuck does it matter what side of the ship you're on? Because you're in the hold at that point.
Yeah. All right, so I nailed one, so I'm good, right? I passed.
One for one.
This will start like how like every competitive video game I play starts, where it's like, well, if I even win one, then I'm happy. And then like 2 hours later, I'm like, fuck!
I only won one.
I only won one goddamn time. It's bullshit.
That was like our whole experience as a team play at Rocket League. But
yeah, and it kept going, and that's why no one plays games with me anymore.
All right, so the next phrase is to win something hands down, which of course means to win easily. The term hands down originates from horseback racing, where if you had built up a big enough lead, you could relax the reins and let your hands down before you crossed the finish line.
That seems like a bad idea. That seems like a terrible idea. Why would you do that?
Oh, he won falling half-ass off the horse.
Instead of gradually
stick around.
Instead of gradually controlling the horse and slowing down, we let go and cheer.
The term hands down, this is the second one. The term hands down originates from the time of pistol duels, which is up till present day, I think. Where someone quick on the draw facing an unskilled opponent might shoot their opponent while their hands were still down trying to draw their weapon.
See, that sounds really dishonorable and not the way we use, like, the term hands down anyway. Like,
well, but that would be... What would you do as a cowboy if it was like you're... pistols at noon, and then you draw your weapon and you realize the other guy's fumbling for his. Like, it's like you've won at that point. So you're like, well, out of sportsmanship, I'll wait till it at least clears the holster. Like, you're going to kill him either way.
It just seems like a weird thing to brag about, to be like, yeah, I fucked him up because he was fumbling around with his pistol.
See, it's not even. Yeah, well, I guess it would be a brag if you said it, but if the other people are like, man, he won hands down. But
unless it was like he was so damn fast the dude didn't even grab his gun in time,
I didn't consider that mental imagery, and I love it. Like, just because that's where we need to do, like, those stupid-ass YouTube skits. Like, I can just picture the one cowboy, like, desperately fumbling for his weapon, you know, his hands shaking, he can't get it out of the damn holster, and the other one, like you said, what do? You shoot him, and that's dishonorable, but, like, when you wait, that's just kind of, like...
dumbass. Like
that's like letting the other team get within 10 points just so it doesn't look so bad, because you're still going to shoot him before he points it at you.
It is the...
So, like...
Yeah, I guess I'm, just institutionalized by being an Eagles fan, where we do that every game. Give people that chance. But I would say the second one. That made more sense to me.
Good, but it's not that one. It's the horse racing one.
Well, then it's a dumb saying from a dumb origin. And I quit.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you. It seems weird because, although I love that situation too. We've seen it in football where, like, you lower the reins and all of a sudden the horse, like, veers off to the left.
Right. That's my mental image. Is just like, I won, and then the horse goes through the wall like a fucking cartoon.
It's like those clips that we all see where the football player's, like, holding the ball out and high stepping across the end zone, but at the, like, 10-yard line, and the ball gets stripped before he even gets there. It's like, yeah.
I guess I would have to see it. There's a lot I don't know about horse racing because I think it's kind of barbaric and stupid. I call me crazy, but I feel like, if the horses were to revolt, we would have it coming.
Yeah, in fairness, you can literally say that about every other life form on this planet. Humans would be the first thing that they come, even dogs.
Nope, fuck that. Like, spiders get everything bad. Like, they deserve every bad thing we've done to them.
But I'm just saying, in their perspective, though, if spiders suddenly found themselves in power, the first threat that they'd come after is us.
But we're not talking about their perspective. We're talking about my perspective, and I like horses, and I hate spiders. And that's my platform. That's what I'm running for president on.
Just wait till this virus turns all horses into 8-legged giant muscle monsters.
If that's a side effect of this, then I hope I just die from it, like now. Okay, so I'm 1 for 1.
All right, next one. Yeah, 1 for 1. Run-of-the-mill, something that's, ordinary or noteworthy. The term run-of-the-mill is a phrase that originated from textile mills, where the term mill run was used to describe a run of fabric immediately after it came off the mill, before being embellished or sewn into anything. It was just an ordinary piece of fabric. Run of the mine, referring to unsorted coal, and run of the kiln, bricks that haven't been sorted for quality or size, were also used among the industries, but didn't make their way into everyday usage. Or, the term run of the mill first described the route supply wagons would take from town to mill and back, as mills which required running water to operate were often constructed outside of populated centers. Because mills were constantly producing, the need to deliver unmilled supplies such as logs or grain, and then return milled products such as wood planks or flour, these routes would be run constantly, which, as you can imagine, was a boring job. Things that were tedious, boring, or just everyday occurrences therefore became runs to the mill, or as we now say, run of the mill.
Those are both really boring descriptions.
I know. I was waiting to hear the glug glug of the bottle.
I'm there. I wish I brought the bottle with me. There's so much like boring detail in it. It's really a coin flip.
I really had to try to kind of match the amount of detail that the actual description had.
And
otherwise,
it's
way too obvious.
So right now, I'm just trying to figure out which one were you lying.
That's the whole point of this. I love lying about this stuff. I love making stuff up. That's why I'm surprised I haven't done this sooner.
You'd be great question writer for Trivia Pursuit. Except in that game, you have to make 50 of the questions about Joss Whedon for some reason. I'm going to say the first one.
In the company. You would be right.
Hell yeah, dude. I have no reason for doing so.
But that run of the mine didn't become oh, how was your day? Just run of the mine. That just sounds stupid. But if that had become the phrase, it would sound normal, and run of the mill would sound stupid.
Well,
That's
if
how
run of
language
the mind sounds like, somebody trying to run out of the mine once that fucking parakeet dies. And you're like, oh shit, the gases, you got to get out. And it wouldn't be just like, oh, this is boring. Like, it would be like, the run of the mine means that we're fucked.
Right. That's what, I don't know if I don't mentioned it, because I don't remember when it happened. But our new house has a gas stove. And the fun part about gas stoves is you really have to watch those knobs. And we bumped one the other day, so it was pumping gas into our fucking house.
Hell yeah,
we didn't realize it until you start to smell gas, which is the advantage of having a nice open, like, first floor plan. But, we've got that bird that I used to complain about on the show all the time. We still have it. And
I thought you were going to be like, not anymore.
No, that's what... Well, and the funny thing is, I keep making fun of her for it, but I kind of get it, because Tara was sitting on the couch feeding Lincoln a bottle, and I was actually outside. It was one of the nice days. I was just reading a book outside, and like my phone rings, and I see it's from Tara. I'm like, well, that's weird. She's just like 20 feet away inside the house. So I answer, and she's like, it smells like gas in here. And it's like, well, then fucking get up and turn it off. Don't call me. But, she had her hands full of a baby in a bottle. But so I had to go like sprinting inside and being like, yep. But the thing is, that's the thing. She's like, well, I couldn't get up. I had to be. I'm like, yeah, but as soon as I got in, even once it was turned off, I'm like, get her and get it out of the house. Like,
I mean, to be fair, like, I would be that incompetent. Like, I'd be worse, because at least she was like, oh, this smells like gas in here. We should do something about it. I would be so much worse. I would be like, oh, it smells like gas in here. Yeah. Well, I'm going to take a nap and see if it blows over.
But anyway, the whole point, that was my joke. I came inside and the bird was still alive, and said, well, we're good for now. Like,
maybe that gas won't come back. But we probably did an episode on how to ward off gas, where you just sprinkle salt on your doorstep.
Salt solves everything.
Yeah. All right, so I'm 2-1.
All right. I like this next one. It's a fun one. To fly off the handle, which means to like go into a state of unpredictable rage.
Something I'm very familiar with.
Right. So you may like it.
The etymology was actually
Ben
me.
Coined this. Yeah.
There's like a picture of like it was like me like in a previous life from like Russia or something. That's the photo by the description.
It's one of those like that you see with the celebrities that where they're like dead ringers for like people from 300 years ago.
Right.
So in the early 1900s, as baseball's popularity grew and the crowds became larger, the phrase became common to describe when a batter's hands would fly off the handle, which could result in the bat being dangerously thrown. Or, back when things were still made by hand rather than manufactured, it wouldn't be uncommon for the axe head to fly off the handle when swung. As you can imagine, when such a thing occurred, it created a pretty dangerous situation.
I'm going with that one second.
The axe handle one?
Yeah.
You'd be wrong if it was something different, but you are correct.
Yeah,
and I just love the mental image that it was so common back then for axe heads to just fly off.
Like I knew going before you even started, it was like whatever one is most dangerous is the true response.
That was the problem with that, and I think the phrase goes back way farther than like baseball. But although I don't know, because that's
I mean, it was a believable option. It was just I think they would have come up with a different phrase for something like just losing the bat in baseball, and they did. It's called "Oops, fucked up." But flying off the handle, like for axe, just And
if it was a big enough deal back then to coin a whole phrase, they probably would have had nets way before like the supposed start of this year that hasn't happened yet. But anyway,
hell yeah, dude, I'm good at this.
Yeah, 3 for 4, but I got you once,
and I'm sloshed. So,
okay, close but no cigar. So, of course, that means almost accomplishing a feat, but not quite getting there. After the U.S. placed embargoes on Cuban imports, Americans no longer had easy access to the famed cigars. Aficionados were forced to look elsewhere, but finding many of the alternatives to be inferior, they began using the phrase "close but no cigar" to insinuate that the other cigars were okay, but they were no Cubans. It didn't take long for the phrase to make its way into the common American lexicon.
It is a good phrase.
Yeah, I like it, especially now because with like the way that like tobacco use, it's not gone obviously, but like it's not like it was in the 50s and 60s or even in like the 90s or early 2000s where like it seemed like 50% of the population smoked. Like close but no cigar, it's like people now are like, well, good, I didn't really want a cigar. Should be close but no Bitcoin or something. I don't know. I don't know what the kids
something
want
the kids
nowadays.
can relate to.
Yeah. So the other option is before carnival games were rigged cash grabs that used oversized stuffed toys and colorful doodads to prey on the hopeful naivety of children. They were rigged cash grabs that preyed on the hopeful naivety of... I keep saying that wrong. Of adults. Cigars were a common prize, and close but no cigar was a common phrase that the operators would say to make the customer feel like they were just this close to winning in the hopes that they would try again.
So maybe it's... You cut out a little bit there. Well, where's the cigar come in to the second one?
The second one, it's before the carnival games, you'd win shit like goldfish and stuffed animals.
Okay.
You would win cigar because they were aimed at adults rather than
Gotcha.
kids.
All right. Because for a second I thought like, so the etymology is just some carny fuck came up with it.
Jim, but everybody liked Jim.
Sounded
So
good.
yeah.
It's like, that's a snappy saying, Jim. I'm gonna go with the second one. I don't.
Would be correct.
Hell yeah, I'm fucking.
That one I thought was pretty easy because some of these were kind of hard to come up with believable alternatives. The problem I had with my fake one is that I thought it sounded good except for the fact that we didn't ban imports from Cuba until 1960s, and close but no cigar was a phrase that sounds very old.
Well,
I don't know what.
Well, that wasn't the detail that fucked you up, because I promise you I was only half listening.
And that's where the alcohol comes in. Very convenient for this week's show. But
I guarantee you I would be like at 50% if I was sober right now. Because I'm just going by impulse. Like, what sounds like the most believable thing I would see like way too early in the morning on the History Channel.
You know what though? I've probably talked about. I'm not one to brag, except for I brag all the time. I've always just been a really good test taker. Like throughout school, anytime we had like exams in college or like the placement tests and stuff in high school and earlier, like I've always been really good at tests, like to the point that it used to piss off like classmates because I wouldn't do the homework and I'd be a pretty shitty student.
And just nail a test, yeah.
Right. But a big part of that is doing what you just said, where like you hear a couple things and you say, this one just, impulse, I'm not saying pull it out of your ass, but there's, if you feel something's right, it probably is. And if it's not, then you're probably going to get it wrong anyway.
Yeah.
Like, I know the people that I know that are the worst test takers are the ones that sit and like stress over every detail of every answer. Like, well, it could be this, but what if it's this? Or what if it's, well, then you end up just getting in your own head.
I feel like I never got those tests though after a certain point where you could go with a hunch. Like occasionally, I feel like if any time I guessed on a test, I got it wrong. So I kind of had to study. I still didn't do my homework, and if I didn't study on a test, I would just draw like Ninja Turtles in for the answer because at that point in my life, I didn't really care.
Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to like pretend like, oh, I didn't study at all and I just fucking inertly knew because I'm magical or something like that. I paid attention in class and I took notes and stuff. It's just I also didn't like go out of my way to like drill the stuff into my head. But a lot of that too is everybody learns differently, and I'm the kind of person that if I write it, it's not hearing the teacher say it, it's me writing it down. I never have to consult or look at those notes again. Or at least not in like the immediate time period. If you give me 6 months, I've forgotten everything, then I need to consult them. But
yeah, like that was always the advice. Best advice my mom ever gave me about school is if they write it down or they project it up on a board, you write it down. Mm-hmm. And you don't need to listen to the lecture. Just write that down and you will retain a lot of that shit.
Right.
And usually enough to pass.
And like I said, everybody learns different. Some people, they're completely visual. Some people are completely auditory. But man, I shut auditory out, like you're just talking about right now with these definitions. Like, if I'm just supposed to sit and like twiddle my thumbs and listen to you, it's going right over my head. But
well, yeah. Well, I feel like, you're giving me two answers and like 50% of it is bullshit. So I only have to listen to half of it. And then like I have a fair shot.
I was this close to writing 3 answers where 2 of them would be bullshit and 1 would be real. And I feel like that would have made it a little more difficult, but I didn't. Yeah. But that would have been putting on a lot of work for me to try to come up with a third believable alternative. But maybe
and then I win anyway because you put way too much work into a show.
Right.
All right. So I forgot my score. So
let's see, 1, 2. I know you've only missed 1, 3, 4. You're 4 for 5. And there's 10 of these, so we're only halfway through. This show's going to be 3 hours long.
Okay. So I'm rocking a cool 80% right now.
It's pretty good. That was always good enough to.
That's a B, baby.
I consider that a win. Which
B
is, like I
Ben.
said, why I was a bad student. Bad student's too much. I was a mediocre student. I was a very unmotivated student.
I was a rad student. I didn't go for 2 years.
School's fake too, just like the economy.
Yeah, that is true. School is bullshit too.
All right, next one. To steal someone's thunder, which means to take credit for somebody else's accomplishment or steal the limelight, from something somebody else did.
Right.
In the 1700s, English dramatist John Dennis created a device to emulate the sound of thunder for a play he was working on. Unfortunately for John, the play flopped, but when the next play opened, he realized they were using his device. "That is my thunder," he shouted. "By God, the villains will play my thunder, but not my play." So basically, he was pissed off that they would use the sound effect, but they wouldn't let him put on his own play.
I would love if that one was true.
After the quote made it to English newspapers, the phrase "steal one's thunder" began appearing as common use. Just like people liked it, so they picked it up.
Oh man, if that one's real, I'm gonna laugh for days because what a weird random thing to latch onto. Like of all the chances of like the entire human population taking something from that, like what a
my device to
minor
make thunder
thing.
Sounds.
Yeah.
Which, in my understanding, has been, like the Greeks did it with just a different way, I would imagine, because...
Yeah, just rattle some shit, and, yeah.
Well, I think the Greeks just had some guy saying, "Boomicus!"
As we all know, Zeus threw every bolt with Boomicus. Boomicus sounds like a rapper. That would work.
I like it. The other option, during the era of the American Civil War, cannoneers played a huge role on the battlefield. But due to the hectic nature of war and the manner in which volleys of cannon shot were coordinated in waves, it wasn't always clear whose shot had landed. Soldiers ended up coining the phrase "steal my thunder" to mean when another cannon crew took credit for their shot. After the war, the phrase kind of made its way into common usage.
Okay, I'm gonna like I said, if I'm wrong, then I'm gonna laugh a lot. But I'm gonna say the second one.
You should have gone with your funny one because it was this to steal his thunder device, and this is my favorite one that I came across. But I couldn't say that ahead of time because
what a fucking 100%. Obscure way to get a common saying like.
And I love that. Now I'm sure
you could have told me that a guy just. It came from a guy having a bad night on the toilet, and that would have been more believable than some drama fuck being like, "You took my thunder."
My thunder, but not my play.
But not my because your play sucked, dude.
If that's an exact quote, because it was something I kind of mangled it a little bit just to I needed to format it differently for the script, but to say something like, "That's my thunder, by God. The villains will play my thunder, but not my play." It's like, because you word things like that, your play had to suck.
Yeah, why would you say that out loud, you cringy douche?
But everybody's reaction to it was the same as yours because they immediately were like, "I love that. I'm going to use that myself."
No, that wasn't my reaction at all. My reaction was like, what a stupid thing to say out loud. And then you watch the world around you take it, and it is pretty much
now
what we do.
Now you stole my thunder quote.
It is pretty much what happens on the internet now, where it's like, people being like, "Oh man, that's cool, church." What the fuck does church mean?
Yeah.
But I mean,
I have no. That's some of these articles I was coming across were like on the origin of like these current phrases, like.
Yeah.
Well, the first one was a little interesting, so I was like, oh, this is promising. And it was legit, calling something legit was actually from like the 1800s or early 1900s, like theater performances when they would describe, like when you'd get a play, you'd have an acting troupe and you'd get a script in, and like one that was actual good like drama, they would say it was a legit drama. And that's kind of where it came from. I'm like, well, that's really interesting because you hear somebody calling something legit and you think, at the earliest, I think, like, I don't think now, really, because that isn't... Oh, people use it, but it's not like it was in the 80s and 90s. But that's what you think of as, like, MC Hammer and, like, that era.
Right.
So that was interesting. And then it went on to, like, all the other stuff. And it's like, this is stupid. Like, the more I learned about that, the more I just wanted to shoot myself in the face. And it's like, this is the wrong path to travel down.
Yeah.
Anyway, right. So that puts you at 4 for 6. I'm trying to screw you and flip the numbers around.
Yeah.
4 for 6 is still pretty good in my books. Like I said, that's...
Yeah, I'll live with that. Because like I said, I don't... I
One
don't
more,
know
you're
shit
guaranteed
right
at least 50%, and that's...
Yeah.
That's not a losing record. To chew the fat, which means just like idle talk or chit-chat. By the 1800s, saying somebody had a fat tongue had already become a popular colloquialism to describe somebody who mumbled or blathered incoherently. Eventually, this evolved into chewing the fat as people began describing those constantly talking about nothing in particular as chewing on their fat tongues. Or, historically, pork belly was one of the more common rations stored on sailing ships. Due to the way it was prepared and packed in salt.
You can't fucking bring up sailing again.
Due to the way that pork belly was packed in salt and its high fat content, it tended to be preserved very, very well. It lasted. However, it was also a very unpleasant food to eat because it was tough and chewy and didn't really have much flavor other than the overwhelming like saltiness. So when the rations were served, which were often the last resort once all the better food had run out, the sailors were known to complain while they sat and tried to chew through the meat.
So, I'm going to say 2, I guess.
I figured when you said earlier that you were going to go with all the ones that...
You can't bring up boats and not, like... Because it paints such a fucking picture for me that even if it's not true, it's like, that's really believable. And like all the other information you throw out, I completely disregard as like...
Yeah, well, that's the problem too. Yeah, I kind of start paying attention when you say, oh, in the sailing days, it's like, tell me more. And then it's like, oh, well, somebody back in the old-timey times said, whatever, I don't care.
Yeah.
And I just double-check. I was going to say, when you said that earlier, when you're like, oh, the sailing, a lot of phrases came from sailors.
Hell yeah.
That was the last one on this. I wanted to double-check. No, I might have screwed
sailors built this goddamn society, okay?
I just scanned through all the real answers. I didn't scan through all my fake answers, so I hope I didn't write a fake sailing one, because then I just gave it away. But yeah, sailor. A lot of our language came from sailing.
All right, so that was right?
Yes. So
all right, awesome. Now I want to know how that spiraled into shooting the shit. Because that's the phrase I use a lot, and I want to know where that came from.
After they sat around complaining about the pork belly that they're chewing on, it was the oldest ration, so it'd give them all the runs, and they'd have to stick their asses out the cannon holes.
So sailors would hang off the ledge and just blast ass into the ocean and chit-chat.
Yeah, you just open the cannon hatch and stick your ass out, but you'd be sitting next to each other down the row, and you'd be talking as you're firing out turds.
And that's how you make those lifelong friendships.
Mark it down, folks. That's... All right. To give the cold shoulder, or to like turn your back on somebody. The phrase first appeared out of the American West, where ranchers and cowboys who spent their nights gathered around campfires. When someone would grow tired, they'd often lay down with their backs to the rest of the group so as to sleep, and because bedrolls often only came up to about chest height, the shoulder was left exposed. Hence, they were giving the cold shoulder to the rest of the party that was still awake. Or... In medieval times, it was common for the king to signal the end of a feast or a banquet by serving a cold piece of pork, usually from the pork shoulder. So give the cold shoulder then became used to mean someone who was done with you and no longer desired your presence.
By giving me more food to make sure I stick around.
Mm-hmm.
Smart.
Well, I mean, it tricks them because it's like, here's more food. And you're like, all right, the party's still going. Oh, this fucking pork is cold. I'm out of here. And you're like,
yeah, the host is like, yes. It's medieval times. Everything's fucking cold.
That's
like,
true. You're like,
the food's
hey,
cold
it doesn't
and the
have
beer's
maggots
warm.
on it. Woohoo. Right.
Yeah. I'll say one.
You're wrong.
All
Apparently, give the cold shoulder goes way the hell back. And it is a stupid situation that, like...
Yeah.
That'd be like having your friends over, and then you're like, I want them to go home, so I'm going to bring out some cold pizza. And they'd be like, fuck yeah, pizza.
And they'd be like, oh, this is cold pizza from the fridge, as if, like, they wouldn't still eat it. Like...
Right. Or like, maybe that's how a lot of the, like, beheadings happened, is the one ass that didn't get it, he didn't have social grace. Like... Yeah. It's like, oh, this ham is cold, and he turns around and starts, like, roasting it over a candle. And the king's like, God damn it. Off with his head.
All right.
That one was, like, very hard for me to believe because back then, it didn't seem like kings had much tact. It would just be like, all right, all ye get the fuck out of my courtroom. Like, yeah. Go home. But, yeah.
So I'm 5 for 8 now, right?
Yeah, 5 for 8. 2 more. Until the cows come home, which means waiting for something that isn't going to happen or is not going to happen soon. Cows were often brought into the barns and then milked at night, which would have been one of the last chores on the farm before going to bed. Farmers would literally work until the cows came home, which, as you can imagine, felt like forever. And that's what the phrase evolved to mean. Or... during the days of the Wild West, when cows would go missing, if a rancher didn't set out to look for them, they'd often never be found. Between rustlers and predators and environment itself, it would often be deadly, if you just let your cows wander. Therefore, waiting for the cows to just come home meant you'd probably be waiting forever.
Jeez, that's tough. Those are both really believable. Again, like,
boring.
the more you can bog these down in, like, the minutia of, like, old-timey life, is like makes it so hard to, like, take a gut feeling guess.
Like I say, you got to match it though. When the real answer doesn't have all those details, sometimes it's too much of a giveaway. It's like when the people that try to lie, but they come up with like too many unimportant details.
Right, you've fleshed it out too much, and it's like you're not writing a novel. You're just trying to fool the police for one more day.
Well, frankly, as we've talked about with some creepypastas, even if you are writing a novel, don't do that.
Yeah. I'm trying to... What's fucking me up is, like, I can't remember the last time I said or heard the phrase, cows come home. Yeah, and now I'm, like, even doubting, like, what it means anymore.
It is one that I grew up as a kid. You'd hear it not all the time. It's not like your parents would say, "Oh, you've been out till the cows came home" or whatever. But it was also more common. It isn't one that's really still used much.
Yeah.
I think cows are a hoax. I don't think we actually have cows anymore.
I'll say 2. Screw it, just to keep this thing moving.
Nope, it was the first one.
God damn it.
Which was the being milked at night, which is weird because what little I do grow up in an agricultural area of the country, and I always hear about farmers having to get up very early to milk their cows. It seems weird to do it at night. Like, let's wait till it's dark and then put our heads underneath a cow.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. That's why I don't live that fucking life. How about that? That's why I live in a city with internet, fuckers.
I think that puts you at 5 for 9. So you're approaching that 50-point line.
Yeah. My bases are covered.
Yeah. Like I said, you can't... You did
50%, yeah.
You did enough to make me
Which
doubt
isn't
my
half.
abilities to bullshit, but... Yeah, but for the Browns, it's a winning season. Like, so...
I'm the Browns of podcasting.
All right, the last one. To hear something through the grapevine. It's to hear like a rumor, hear something secondhand. In the mid-1800s, telegraphs that could not be sent directly between two parties were instead sent from person to person until they reached their destination. These became known as grapevine telegraphs. So if you heard something through the grapevine, if you were just one of those nodes along the way, you would hear, whatever the message was, but it wasn't meant for you. You would find out as it was passed through to its destination or passed through the grapevine. Or, to this day, grapes are still picked by hand. It's a tedious, labor-intensive job. Workers often chat while they work, and because rows of grapevines are tall and can be quite full, it's not uncommon for other workers to overhear gossip between two coworkers, as it is literally heard through the grapevine.
Shit, those are both very believable. And fuck you for that. I'm gonna go with my gut too.
Nope.
God damn it! Fuck you. That's not fair at all. You can't make them totally possible.
I wish I could have found 10 that were like Steal the Thunder, because that was by far the best. Because that added like the game showness to it, but also like just ridiculousness. And
that's the thing. That last one just totally preys on my ignorance, because I don't know anything about communication back then, and I don't know what picking grapes from a fucking vineyard looks
really,
like.
That's why I said I liked this idea, because really I wanted to test my ability to just bullshit, like completely pull something out of my ass and make it sound at least like on the level with the other thing.
Yeah. Well, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed making me look like a drunken asshole. I hope you realize that next week I'm going to return the favor.
It really didn't. What would have worked? What would have really made you look like the asshole is if you had really gotten into like the breaking it down and been like, well, but I know telegraphs never went from person to person. They went to telegraph stations. Like
just
like
doing
the people
that
do
millionaire thing. Like
yeah.
Just well, I know it's not C.
And I know the producers tell the people like, hey, you need to keep talking. We make this interesting for television. But man, people just talk themselves into idiocy.
Yeah, I'd be the worst contestant, because I would just be like, B, final answer.
Yeah.
It's like, are you sure you don't want to work? No, I'm sure B.
Well, they would end up kicking me out, because I'd be saying stuff like, oh shit, I don't know. And they'd be like, you can't say shit on air. You'd be like, but I don't fucking know.
Yeah,
you can't say that either.
That's the thing. Like I said, fuck you. And I want you to know, I would have said the same thing to Regis.
Well, probably before the game even started.
Before the game even began, I'd be like, man, fuck you, Regis. You got a fucking weird head and a perfect life. Hate you. Anyway. But yeah, that was fun. And I'm going to be doing... you totally inspired me. I'm going to be bringing my own twist on it
there's
next
a lot
week.
of things you can do, like come up with a famous, not a super famous person, obviously, but like, or you could, a super famous person, and like, here's a fact from their life, and here's another one. Which one is real? Which is something that I've thought about before too. There are a lot of ways you can go with it. But,
yeah.
We've talked about it before. Like my ultimate dream is to completely bullshit a whole episode.
Like I think,
but like about somebody that's famous enough that people have heard of but don't know enough about that they're instantly like, that's fake. That's like, but anyway.
I think a fun twist on this, and I'm already planning it in my head, is it real or is it a creepypasta? Because because
there's a lot of things out there that
because there's things so stupid it could definitely have been written for that damn site.
And it really ties into like a lot of you could do the serial killers too. Like, did somebody really murder people this way or not?
Yeah.
That kind of. You got to be a little more specific. Yeah. So,
but this was fun.
It was kind of testing it out, and I thought it'd be fun, especially in these trying times. To do something a little different. But and if you kind of played along or listened along and kept your own score, if you follow us on Twitter, I'd be curious just to see.
And if you beat me, don't at me.
What we're going to find out is that we're both dumbasses, and everybody else knew the origins to all these. Like, yeah, that's just common knowledge, you jackasses. Like,
I went 8 for 10. Yeah, well, fuck you, okay.
Or there's a very real possibility that, somebody that knows languages way better than Reader's Digest or Mental Floss, the two sites I got these from, will be like, that's not where those came from.
Once I sober up and I'm editing this, I'm going to fucking fact check all of these. But anyway, thank you for listening to another episode, a long episode, to get you through this cold time in the world. Anyway, we'll be back next week with more bullshit. Bye.
Bye-bye.